On June 26, 2026, I woke up at approximately 9 in the morning to discover that I had finally become a published author. Now, just 8 hours later, I was driving to my very first book festival to publish that very same book. Now, whether you are a first-time author, much as myself, or you have been in the publishing industry for years, I think the pieces of advice that I had learned on that day can apply to anyone. Now, first, I want to get into how exactly I managed to get into a book festival despite literally having a book that was out for less than a day. But how did we get here? Now, the story starts a few months before June 6, 2026. If you want to skip to the part where I'm just talking about the tips that I learned on that day, you can go to this timestamp. But if not, and you'd like to hear a bit more about the process, for example, if you're a first-time author such as myself and looking to get into a book fest, you might want to listen to this. Now, everything happens for a reason. It really does. And this is something many people won't think about in their day-to-day lives. But every single action that you have has a subsequent reaction. Now, this was actually the second ever book fest that was put on by these organizers. The first one happened in January of that same year, 2026. I decided to go to that just on a whim, and through that, I met many authors, but more importantly, I signed up for an author's mailing list. Now, the mailing list is very important because at the time I was not active really at all on Instagram, which is where these organizers were posting all of the event information. Through that, I found out about the second event that was going to be happening in June. Just so happens that there was time for me to still submit a position, and I decided to do just that. Here's my tip for you first-time authors that perhaps don't have a lot of credibility, such as myself, don't have much history for people to look back on, maybe don't even have that big of a social media following. In fact, at the time, the only active social media accounts I had was YouTube. I did have a TikTok account, which was unfortunately deleted, and I hadn't started my Instagram account until honestly just a few weeks before the event was supposed to kick off. So I really had nothing to my name. On top of that, I had absolutely no proof that my book was real. Now, what do I mean by this? So I have the ISBN numbers and I have the copyright for it. Now, back in the day, a few months before June 6th, I had nothing. I didn't have the ISBN number back, and I definitely didn't have the copyright back. As anyone knows who's been applying for copyright, that takes forever. So I didn't have any of that to my name. But what I did have was honesty. And I was upfront with them. I said, hey, I am very new. This is an indie authors festival, so I'm sure that definitely worked in my favor. But I said, hey, I'm an indie author, I haven't published my book yet, and I don't have a lot of proof that it exists. I didn't frame it like that, I framed it much nicer, obviously, but you get what I'm saying, is that I was upfront and I said, hey, I really loved the previous event. I really loved everything. I loved meeting all the authors, I loved all this, I love all that. And I would be so grateful if I would be allowed to host my book at your next book fair on June 6, 2026, which is when my book is coming out. So you would actually be, and I didn't say it like this obviously, but you would be then the first people, sort of the exclusive, on the day that I publish my book, it would be at your festival. And I think that really worked out in my favor, and I'm not going to spin this like I'm some sort of marketing genius and that this was some grand plan, which, although it definitely worked out towards my favor, and I think us as debut authors, especially indie authors that don't have a time commitment to perhaps a publishing house and can have more flexibility on our publishing date, you can work that in when you are applying to these festivals, because I think really, obviously I'm not them, I can't read their minds, but I think that really worked out in my favor because it is sort of that exclusivity of it all. So definitely work yourself, and again, going back to that, I'm not some sort of marketing genius. This actually was, I think, a bit more of a coincidence than an actual plan that I had been like, okay, they're having their event on June 6, 2026. My book is coming out on June 2026. That way they can flex that they are having a debut novelist the day of on their event and make it seem very exclusive. So it worked out really for both of us. And I think if you're in that position, right, if you are having a book coming out in like 4 months, 5 months, however long, looking at events, especially for indie authors that are happening around that time, because book festivals that are more geared towards indie authors are obviously going to be looking for indie authors such as yourselves. But then, as an indie author, you have that power over your publishing schedule to be able to fit it around these events, to make these events and the organizers of the event really feel that they have something special on their hands, that they have something exclusive. But that's enough about the pregame. Let's get into the action. What about the day of the event? Now, I have 4 big tips for you, okay? The first one is, above all else, you want to be prepared. Now, obviously, you want to have some things printed. Where can people find you? For me, I had a few QR codes linking to my Instagram page, which I had just started. I also had another QR code, which was linking to the Amazon page, which somebody actually ended up buying my ebook instead of my paperback the day of the event. It was actually very surreal to have someone buy your ebook right in front of you. But that's neither here nor there. Now, of course, if you're going to do stickers, make sure you buy those in advance. Or you print those in advance, or you get those all cut in advance. Now, I actually made my own stickers for the event, courtesy of Photoshop and my ability to Google stock photos and put some things together. I had printed those well in advance, but I hadn't cut them until the day of because, of course, I'm super lazy. And that ended up being a huge stressor as well. But, I mean, of course, it worked out well, but do not do what I did and wait until the last day to get all of your ducks in an order. The next segment of this, of course, is the day of the event, the actual nitty-gritty of it. Now, depending on what type of festival you're at, for example, larger ones, so I've heard anyway, will provide you with a way to file your taxes or a tax form. Now, that's great from what I've heard. I can't attest to that because I got my own excise tax. But if you want to do that, make sure obviously you get your files taxed or your taxes filed at a later date. But if you're going to do it before, make sure that you know what you're doing because you don't want to get in trouble with the big man at the IRS. Now, for me, that took, I think, about maybe like a month to get the actual, probably less than that, more like 2-3 weeks to get the physical paper. But of course, they give you, at least in my state, the digital copy straight away. So if you really won't get it through the mail in time, then you can just print it out there. I guess if anyone comes in and asks for your license to sell or the general excise tax form, then you need to have that. Nobody asked for mine, which was good, but I did have it just in case. And of course now I need to file taxes, which is always great. No, it isn't. Now, the second big thing I noticed was the setup. Now, if you're like me, right, first time debut novelist, you've only ever been to one ever book fair, you don't really know what to expect, right? Especially you don't really know how to apply it to yourself. Now, I noticed one key thing, which is that a lot of the authors had a pretty normal table setup, which is great. You know, they had their books, maybe they had a headshot or an about me or like a QR code or a link that would then link to their like author page, you know, standard stuff like that. And of course they were standing behind the table. Some people had stickers laid out, which would help, you know, I guess bring people and be like, oh, can I take one? And they're like, yes, you can. And while you're here, let me tell you about my book, right? A lot of people have very standard stuff like that, which is great. Now, here's the thing. The person who was to my right, directly to my right, had a beautiful table setup, and I think that really worked in her favor. Now, we were set up kind of towards the center of the line, so everyone would kind of hit us, you know, before deciding to turn back. But a lot of people stopped at her table specifically around our area, I think also in part due to how beautiful her table setup was. Now, she had these nice tablecloths, right, on the tables. She also had this wooden crate, this very well decorated, like engraved wooden crate with, I believe, like a candle and this like little tiara on top, which I assume obviously is probably relevant to her book. And then in the center of that wooden crate, around these vines and this cool little mantle that was propping her book up. A lot of people I saw took pictures of that and took pictures of themselves with that. And here's why that's so important. In our day and age, social media is king, especially for indie authors such as ourselves, right? And all these people on Book Talk, right, or Bookstagram or BookTube, whatever, are going to be looking for that title. You know, they're going to be looking for that thumbnail. They're going to be looking for the picture that they are going to put on their feed, right? Because people are going to click on things that look aesthetically pleasing. You know, even if they don't really care about, maximizing clicks or maximizing outreach, they're still going to want to have that beautiful picture because, it makes my Instagram look nice. It really rounds out the aesthetic of my page. I would bet on it that a lot of the people who took pictures of her setup probably put it either in their social media or had it as the very front page of the social media, which means people, when they're scrolling through these people's Instagram pages, TikToks, YouTubes, whatever, are going to see that book title and, of course, all the aesthetically pleasing setup around it. And they're going to see that. So even if they don't directly think, oh, that's such a cool setup, oh, I wonder what the book's about, I'm going to go search it now, it's still going to be in the back of their mind. So if it ever gets brought up again later, then they're going to have that experience with it already. Now, I'm no advertising major, I'm no marketing major. I really don't know how this would work, if it would actually increase sales or not. But I think it's something to know, and even if it doesn't, I think that's definitely a conversation starter. And I did see some people talk to her about, that centerpiece, and it was really cool. Like, I caught myself like looking at it. I'm like, damn, I wish I had thought of something that cool, So definitely a centerpiece, a statement piece, even just a tablecloth, if you don't want to set up that big centerpiece, if you can't bring it with you, whatever. Even just having a simple tablecloth, I think, to cover up, maybe a plastic foldable table, really elevates the atmosphere. It really makes people feel more at ease, I think, than, the cold, unfeeling plastic table. And the third piece of advice I can give to you is to just be yourself. All right? Now, these people, the book community, are incredible, wonderful people. I think it's so easy to just really get wrapped up in the toxicity of social media and the isolation of social media to forget that all of these people out there love books and they love what you do. And even if your book is not their type of genre, for example, I write sort of more darker themes, right? Which a lot of readers aren't going to really want to read. I totally understand that, and they totally understand that too. And despite not having a lot in common with our loves of genres, we still shared that same love of books. And it was so incredible just to be able to talk with them, not directly about my book, not directly about their books, but just generally speaking, and the people really will come, like I had so many wonderful conversations with people who probably had absolutely no interest in reading a book that featured body horror, that featured creature fiction, but they still followed me on social media. They were like, hey, this isn't really my style. Like, I even had somebody darkly say that. I don't read horror, but I would love to support you, can I follow you on social media somewhere? And I'm like, yeah, here's the QR code to my Instagram page. And I'm like, great, I hope to see more from you. And I'm like, thanks. It's nothing like social media, is what I'm trying to say. And I went there super nervous. I think I spent the first 30 minutes being just like scared out of my mind that they were going to be able to tell that I was, a fraud, or, that I didn't know what I was doing. And they were going to eat me alive for it, because people on social media definitely will. Not all people, but, some people will. But it's nothing like that in the real world, and I think you need to have that reminder, like an auditory reminder to yourself that these people, love the same things you do, and the only thing they want to have is community. Now, the fourth thing I want to give to you is community, right? Circling a little bit back to this, but more specific to you as an indie author. So this is again going to be geared more towards people who are first-time authors, such as myself. As part of the Book Fest, including the last one, the organizers set up a little trivia, a little scavenger hunt. So there were 8 tiles, and each one of them had something corresponding to an author. Not all authors participated in this, but obviously 8 of them did, including myself. Some of this included the how long an author was publishing for. I believe there was one author that was in the publishing industry for 45 years. Or another tile corresponded with the genre and sort of like general plot of the trilogy that she was selling. And then of course mine talked about how I was publishing my book for the very first time on that day, and a ton of people were, I feel like more interested to talk with me because it felt like more exclusive. Coming back once again to that sort of exclusivity. You're new, you're fresh, you're exciting. You are talking to people for the very first time, and they are talking to you for the very first time, and people are going to feel that. They're going to be like, regardless, this is a super big moment for you, not just because it's your first book fest or because your book came out today, but because both of those things are happening at the exact same time. So I don't know if that sold any books. Obviously, again, I am no marketing major, and this is just my observations as John Everyman. But I think that really putting yourself out there and being upfront with people and saying, hey, we're all in this together and none of us know what we're doing, but who cares, and let's just have some fun. And people are going to love that energy, I think, because I think I could feel people love that energy when I was there on June 6th. Last but not least, though, the books itself. Now, I don't have any personal experience with this because I ordered all of my books like the second I found out that I was going to be in that, which was like 2.5 months, I think, before the event. A very long time, especially for Amazon. I don't know how it changes depending on what time of year it is, because I ordered this, I would guess, maybe May or the month before. And I think I even ordered some book copies just for myself, just a month or so after the new year. So I can't attest to all times of years. Obviously, it's going to change how long shipping and printing is going to take if you're on Amazon, but definitely get those in advance, because when I went to the book fair that happened in January, not mine, which happened in June, I spoke to an author who, unfortunately, because of a shipping delay, did not have her most recent book, which, of course, is a huge bummer. I can only imagine how stressful it would be to have everything set up, everything ready to go, just for the book not to be there. Now, of course, she had published multiple books. She had a trilogy up before that point, and then that fourth book was an independent book, I believe, associated with that series, which is neither here nor there. So she did have things to sell, and she did have things to give to readers. But I'm just saying, of course, if you're a debut novelist like me, you're not going to have those 3 books in reserve. You're only going to have the one. So you definitely want to make sure that you have copies. Now, before I wrap this video up, I just want to say real quick, whether you were at that book fest on June 6th, or if you weren't, whether you bought my book or you didn't, I just want to say thank you so much, every single one of you, for supporting my journey as an author these past few years. Really, truly, it would not have been possible without you all. And if you are an author, I think you can understand this, especially if you've been to a book fest. And that's why I cannot say, even though it is incredibly stressful leading up to the book fest, once you are there, that experience tops no other, because that is, in my opinion, the culmination of all of our efforts as an author, to spend all of this time slaving away at the computer, carefully crafting and honing these characters, editing, formatting, everything else, and then to finally get it in front of a person and just for it to be acknowledged. In my mind, that is success right there, So I hope this didn't scare you. I hope that this encouraged you to really see that anybody can do it. If I can, despite not having a book, in quotation marks, when I was applying, despite only having a book out for a few hours when I went to that book fair, despite it all, that you can do it too. Now, if you have any more questions, be it about the day of the event, something that I learned, something that I didn't, which I wouldn't be able to help you then, anything at all, I would be more than happy to answer your questions in the comments, because I know there is a ton of mystery surrounding BookFest. Because really, as participators, we only see a few hours, probably only 30 minutes if we only stay there, just come and go, to see these events. We never see any of these backdoor stuff, and obviously I'm not going to tell you everything, because I wouldn't want to, give away the trade secrets of this organization, the organizers, but any questions that you have, I would love to answer for you in the comments. And I wanted to say once more, thank you very much, and I hope that all of you will be able to fulfill your dreams as authors. And if you're readers, I hope that you will read a great book in the near future. So thank you very much, and you'll have a great one.